The new fascists will call themselves anti-fascists. This quote, attributed to Ignazio Silone, captures with frightening accuracy the reality we live in today. Fascism hasn't vanished, it has merely changed its appearance. It no longer wears a black uniform or openly waves the flag of dictatorship. Instead, it hides behind progressive speeches, slogans of inclusion, and seemingly democratic institutions. The European Union, which claims to embody the values of peace and freedom, is not exempt from this paradox. Let's remember that its first president, Walter Hallstein, was a lawyer who served the Third Reich under Hitler. What does this legacy mean for the people of Europe? In his novel Bread and Wine, Ignazio Silone denounces the subtle and perverse mechanisms by which a totalitarian regime restricts freedoms, stifles conscience, and manipulates the masses. By engaging with this work, we can analyze how the methods of domination from yesterday are connected to those of today. And above all, why are those who denounce these abuses labeled as fascists by those who are their true perpetrators? An analysis of Bread and Wine, the solitary struggle of Pietro Spina. The novel follows Pietro Spina, an anti-fascist fighter who secretly returns to Italy during Mussolini's regime. Forced to disguise himself as a priest, he takes the name Don Paolo Spada and uses this cover to reflect and try to awaken people's awareness. However, he encounters a disillusioned, manipulated, and intimidated population, unable to organize itself in the face of oppressive propaganda and omnipresent repression. The mechanisms of totalitarianism. Silone describes with frightening accuracy the methods by which authoritarian regimes eradicate all resistance. First, control of information. Under Mussolini, the press and radio were tools of propaganda designed to shape public opinion. Facts were buried under an avalanche of slogans and deliberate lies. Today, the major mainstream media, often subsidized, play a similar role by dictating a single truth and marginalizing dissenting voices. Second, fear as a weapon. Fascist regimes use fear to nip any dissenting opinion in the bud. In Bread and Wine, people are afraid of both the secret police and denunciation by their neighbors. Today, fear has taken on a new form. Fear of censorship, fear of losing one's job or social network for expressing an opinion deemed wrong. Third, division of the masses. The Mussolini regime divided to rule. It played different social classes against each other and stigmatized political opponents as foreign or subversive elements. Today, citizens are pitted against each other under the guise of equality or social justice. The failure of revolt. Pietro Spina quickly realizes that revolt cannot succeed as long as the masses remain trapped in their fear and dependence. This sobering realization resonates strongly in our time. Citizens, although crushed by repressive systems, often turn against the few individuals or movements that try to denounce these abuses. The European Union and Progressivism as instruments of domination. The legacy of Walter Hallstein. The choice of Walter Hallstein, a former active member of the Nazi legal system, as the first president of the European Commission is no coincidence. It shows how institutions that present themselves as democratic can be built on questionable and contradictory foundations. Today, under the guise of progress, the EU is implementing policies that are eerily reminiscent of the control mechanisms of authoritarian regimes. First, excessive centralization of power. As in fascism, the EU centralizes decisions in the hands of an unelected elite, often out of touch with local realities. Second, enforcement of uniformity of thought. Under the pretext of combating hate speech, the EU promotes the censorship of dissenting voices that denounce totalitarian drift, falsely labeling them as fascist, when in reality they are the only true resistance fighters. Third, the crushing of nations. The EU uses instruments such as renewable energies, climate change, migration quotas, or economic regulations to weaken national sovereignty, just as totalitarian regimes imposed centralized structures to eliminate the separation of powers. Progressives and false anti-fascism. Under the pretext of fighting fascism, today's progressives reproduce the very mechanisms they claim to be fighting against. Any opposition to their agenda is labeled as extremist, reactionary, or worse, fascist. These accusations are intended to stifle debate and silence citizens. Conclusion and call for reflection. The novel Bread and Wine reminds us that fascism never returns under the same name. Today, it hides behind progressive speeches and institutions that, instead of protecting freedoms, restrict them. Those who denounce these abuses are systematically marginalized, labeled as fascists, when they are the only true resistance fighters. This is where we stand. The people of Europe must open their eyes to the realities of this new fascism, which hides behind the mask of equality and democracy. What about you? As you watch this film, did you notice that the true fascists are not those who denounce it, but those who hold power today? Leave a comment to share your opinion, and I will be happy to address your thoughts. Let's reflect together and not let ourselves be manipulated by institutions that betray the very values they claim to defend.